Hello and welcome to the 95th episode of Growing Up Geek, the weekly podcast for geek entertainment and nostalgia. My name is Brad and I'm joined by my brother Rob.
Coming to yeehaw!
Oh, a little Neil Diamond action.
Is that Neil Diamond? Because that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay. Whoops. Failed intro. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I am also doing fine. We are double fine. Oh! That is an appropriate segue. We are both playing Brutal Legend.
Mm-hmm.
However, we're not going to talk about that this week because we want a little extra time with the game. I have basically beaten the game, but I know you bought it.
Yeah, using my means of the old place that I used to work at. I have friends there.
Yeah.
And they can take advantage of the friends and family kind of deal where they can give me employee discount on things.
Yeah, and then if they suck, you can return them.
Yeah, well, shh.
Whoops. Yeah, the friends and family plan.
That is kind of a shadier thing, but whatever. Like, it's better than giving it to GameSpot and have them like rip you off and stuff like that. And so far,
you know what? Every podcast I listen to says GameSpot when they mean GameStop.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's just bound to happen at this point. It's just like, I'm not editing that out. We're just going to accept that.
Can I just say, I realized listening to podcasts and stuff about GameStop,
yeah,
how awful that store is. Like, I realized it was awful before.
Right.
But then I realized what the model for that store is, and that is, okay, we're essentially not going to stock anything new unless we're sure we can sell it. And then other than that, we're just a crappy pawn shop for old games and DVDs that nobody wants because they've all probably just pirated them, burned them, and then sold them to GameStop.
Yeah, we've talked about this. But, you know, if I want a new game, I go to Target. If I want an old game, I go to GameStop.
Spatch.
Whatever. Oh, you know, they're not going to be around much longer anyway.
I hope not.
Yeah, let's not kick a guy when he's down.
Kick him.
Anyway, so you were talking about Neil Diamond, but not.
Yeah. Coming to yeehaw.
Right.
Is referring to a gentleman who is sitting behind me as I went to my very first Yankees game.
Oh, sweet.
I know. I realize like this is a geek podcast and all, and sports and geeks, you know, generally don't mix.
Yeah.
But I did want to say, like, it was actually really fun.
And this is because your girlfriend is a New Yorker, right?
Yes. There is such a spectacle when you go to these games that you really can't deny being pulled towards loving whoever it comes up out of that dugout. Like, this is the geek side of this story.
Right.
When the challenging team came out, and in this case it was the Los Angeles Angels, they started playing the Imperial March.
Yeah. And
everybody's just like, boo, you know, like instinctively because John Williams' score makes him sound evil.
Yeah.
And then the Yankees start coming out, and it plays the Skywalker like victory march from the end of episode 4. It's like dun da 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 da.
Yeah, so
like,
you could relate.
Crap.
Yeah,
this is Star Wars, and they're fighting with bats instead of lightsabers, and these guys are awesome. They're the heroes who are going to rescue us and blow up the Death Star.
Yeah, I think I'm going to mutilate this, but I think one of the teams, like from Boston, maybe, uses the music from The Departed, the whole like Dropkick Murphys, or whatever it is, the, you know, shillelaghs shaking and like bagpipes music. I can't remember what it is. Somebody's gonna kill me for getting this so wrong, but yeah, essentially movie music works great at sporting events. And
it was an intense game. It went on for 13 innings, so I got my money's worth, even though I didn't pay for the tickets.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Imperial Marches and Evil Empires, Windows 7.
Indeed, Windows 7.
You wanted to talk about that. It comes out tomorrow in our time.
Yeah.
Probably by the time people listen to this, it has already come out.
I'm actually savvy to a few midnight releases going on, which to me actually kind of blows my mind because it's still an operating system, you know? It's
yeah.
You install it. Like, I installed Snow Leopard on my Mac, and you just... yay, you know, and now my icons look different. You know,
well, no, it's funny.
Like
midnight launches for game consoles, you know, you have the run home to plug it in and play, you know?
Yeah.
Or like the run home to install World of Warcraft. I've always wondered, like, what's the longest amount of time that a person has to wait after running home from the midnight thing? And like probably installing an operating system would be up there, but I think this one actually installs quicker.
Well, if you're going from Vista to 7, which is the recommended way, which is like you have to hack it to go from XP to 7, you're definitely going to have a quicker install because it's very much the same operating system. But yeah, I know a thing or two because I've been playing around with the release candidate for a while now.
Yeah, give us your impressions.
It's hands down the best version of Windows yet. Better than Vista.
Okay, better than XP.
Better than XP.
That's the big thing to me.
Yeah, and to a lot of people, they're like, is it, XP? A lot of people are just, they love so much to put Vista down that they kind of get they're like, I hope I get to put 7 down. It's like, no.
Yeah, well, it's popular to knock the big guy.
No, this really is everything Vista should have been in terms of like a genuine, new, amazing operating system that does new things, has improved performance.
Yeah, let me ask it this way.
Yes.
If you couldn't have 7 all of a sudden, for whatever reason.
Like, say, the license ran out on my release candidate demo?
Yeah, something like that. What would you miss the most, hypothetically, if that were to happen?
I'll tell you right now, the taskbar / launch bar thing that they have on the bottom now is just so awesome and intuitive that it is hard to go back, even to OS 10 at times.
Yeah, I look at that and I'm like, oh, they're revising the taskbar. Like, that's a big deal, but I can't wrap my mind around it. Like, what are you loving so much about that? Like, spell it out.
It's a really flexible kind of mini interface on the bottom of your screen to manage programs that you're running now, programs that you would like to run, and then generally your start bar. And in a very nice graphical style. So let's say, I use Internet Explorer frequently. Well, rather than having it in like this miniaturized launch bar, which is what XP has or what Vista has, I can drag the icon onto that bar to have a permanent home with a full-size icon there right next to the start button. And then if I keep opening up Internet Explorer windows, the nice thing is, rather than flooding that thing with tabs, you'll see the color kind of change of that icon, meaning that it's open, and meaning that there's multiple things. And then obviously you click on that, and then anybody who's seen, like, you get this new panel that opens that allows you to select the specific window you want to go to.
It looks like a subtle visual cue kind of thing.
Yeah.
My thing was like, is that too subtle? Like, are older people going to have a difficult time seeing those like subtle little notices?
Well, no, because a lot of them are color based. A lot of them are kind of, this thing is shiny, and it's shiny in a different way. And if I hold my mouse over it, it's going to be red or something. And you start to whatever it is, it kind of feels intuitive. You start to learn what that means.
Right.
In addition to just like having open that program, that represents an open program and not a permanent program on the dock or the whatever you want to call it.
Right. So that'd be like the biggest thing you think maybe that you'd miss?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been using XP at work, and I gotta say, like, I just got really mad one time because I went to reorganize which programs were opened up on the taskbar. I was like, well, can I move this one to the left and this one to the right so when I'm switching back and forth, it's not as much of a problem? And I realized I couldn't even do that. Like, it was such this intuitive thing to just, I'm going to reorganize how these are down here, and it couldn't do that. And I guess that's the big thing that they're pushing now is Windows 7 is about you, the user, making it into what you want it to be.
Right. Any other quick things besides...
Yeah, the other quick thing I guess I could say is that I am impressed by what the extra mile they're going for compatibility with this. It is in a way to save their butts from the Vista effect.
Yeah.
But one cool thing was when I was installing it, it literally not only asked, run this program to scan your computer, but it said, at this time, before running the scan, hook up any peripherals that you use regularly with your computer, like your MP3 player, your printer, everything, because we need to scan those too. Mm-hmm. And then it goes through, and it went through everything on there. And whereas Vista, I had this whole list, and it took about a day for me to like go and update everything.
Right.
It only found really one thing, which was my Zen, Creative Zen.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like, probably is not going to be a big deal, but you might want to make sure that this works. Visit this website. It was very friendly, easy to use, and so it was a great just show on its compatibility.
Right. And there's like an XP mode that you can run in.
Yeah, there's literally like if you really just don't trust them at all, there's an XP mode, just to silence everybody.
Well, I'm going to be using it soon at work. They're hooking me up with our first Windows 7 machine in the office just to test.
Wow.
And see what it's like. Yeah, we're still running XP.
Leading edge.
I know. But it's like
right.
It's an 8-year-old operating system, and like it's only going to get older. So a lot of people are really hoping that this will be the stable Windows release, because like our IT department has been avoiding it, Vista, just because of fears of instability and whatnot, and all the negative press from it. But here's hoping.
I can almost say with confidence that anybody who wants to go out for that midnight release or whatever by the time you're hearing this, 7 is a worthwhile purchase. It's not gonna suck.
Growing Up Geek review, it's not gonna suck.
Yep.
Awesome.
Woohoo!
I would like to talk about Marvel's Create a Comic website.
Create a Comic?
Yeah, Marvel has, I guess there's a cartoon that they have called the Superhero Squad.
Man, we're out of touch.
It's on Cartoon Network, I guess, Saturday mornings. And the website for that Superhero Squad has this create your own comic feature, and it's totally for kids, it's like easy to use and everything. But I was fooling around with this today, and it is awesome. So I have to draw attention to this because it immediately made me feel like when I was a kid and I was trying to create my own comics, I wish that there had been something like this. And this runs in your browser, so I'd encourage people to check this out. But basically you have like a little mini Photoshop where you select your panels. You can actually create a comic strip or a comic book, and your comic book can have like 20 pages.
Wow.
They let you do all this in the website, and then they let you download a PDF version, which is awesome. How easy and intuitive it is. So anyway, you have these panels, and you choose kind of what your panel layout is, and then you can drop backgrounds from like this big list of pull downs into the panels, and then drop characters on. And the cool thing is the backgrounds are raster, they're pixelated, but the characters are vector. So when you scale them, you can enlarge them all the way up till just the head is filling the screen. And then you can, make... So I quickly threw together like this evil villain creating this Hulk-type character. And all I did was put the guy's, face real big and have and word balloons are really easy too. And all the fonts are selectable. It's great. It's totally great. And I had the guy saying, laugh at me, will they? And then this weird like mushroom cloud, this green mushroom cloud.
Yeah.
And then there's this like Hulk creature screaming, I live, And I even made his font like extra yellow and like crazy. Anyway, it didn't take me more than like a few minutes to whip this cheesy comic together. And already I was like, okay, that's not bad. You could send that to your friends in an email or something. Wow, really impressed with this. And it got me thinking about, like I said, creating comics when I was younger. I don't know if you remember Fang.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made this comic with a friend of mine, Matt May, and it was basically we had different medium on every page. Like one page would be pencil, the next page would be blue ink, next black ink, whatever I had at the time when I was drawing that page. But we made it all the way through, and it took a ton of time, It was a comic about a guy that turns into a werewolf, jumps out of a plate glass window. Very basic, and the art got progressively worse over the course because it's like, whew, this is hard. But if somebody's out there and they have an idea for a comic, this is billed as a kid's website, but check this sucker out. I mean, all the characters are the super deformed version of like Iron Man and Thor and Silver Surfer that are found on this Superhero Squad show. But I had a blast with this, man. So I highly encourage people to check that out. It's superheroesquad.marvel.com.
That's really cool. I mean, imagine being a kid and having access to those kind of tools to just create your own stories. I'm just thinking like you and me with Ninja Turtles.
Oh
and,
my
like,
God,
if we
yeah.
had, like, let's make... Because we'd always play things out or act things out, and then to go in the extra mile and like, let's make our own comic with these Ninja Turtles in them doing things that we've played out. That'd just be so cool.
They're giving you so much for free that I can't imagine this is going to stick around, but I really hope it does, especially because it's a lot like almost like the Adobe Photoshop on the web, but like I almost think this is easier to use, like better. You can actually move toolbars around. Like you have like a floating palette of backgrounds. Super intuitive, easy to use. If I was a kid, I would just be... I mean, heck, I can't wait to play more with this thing and make some more comics.
Can you create your own characters?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Again, the only downside is the limitation of the actual characters they had, but they're all vector, like I said. I mean, you can do a lot with what they give you.
Nice.
But yeah, it's just great. I was all queued up to talk about something else today, and then at the last minute I saw that and I played around with it, and I'm like, I got to talk about that. Yeah, I was going to talk about Marvel's motion comics, which I watched some of that today on Hulu. They have the Spider-Woman, the first 5 episodes of the Spider-Woman motion comic, which, by the way, people should check that out, too. Really good, atmospheric kind of cross between like a radio drama and a comic. But, yeah, this thing is so fun, so by all means.
Nice. I may check it out. Speaking of Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, speaking of kids, we're going to talk about the movie adaptation of the children's book, Where the Wild Things Are, which was a book by Maurice Sendak. And people have probably seen this book if they haven't read it. It really only consists of 10 sentences. It's a short book. But it's about this little kid who dresses up in a wolf costume, and he's sort of sent to bed without dinner, and he enters the world of these wild things, which is like all these different monsters that sort of appear in his bedroom. And he spends a little time having a wild rumpus with them, which is just, going crazy, and then he eventually gets lonely and realizes, hey, I miss my mom, I miss the real world, and he leaves. 10 sentences. That has been expanded by Spike Jonze into this full-length movie. And in the movie version, similar situation where he sort of gets really upset and he decides to just sort of run away. Instead of to his room, he runs down to the ocean or to the water. He finds a boat and he ends up getting to the world of the wild things. So I'll just turn it over to you without spoiling too much. What did you think of this movie?
Yeah, my first thing I have to say is I don't think this is a kid's movie. I haven't gone to see a kid's movie in so long.
Right.
And so all of these trailers are targeted for kids or for families or people, interested in kids.
Well, we saw the Christmas Carol trailer, which I have to say, for an elderly man, Ebenezer Scrooge is one flexible dude.
Yes.
In fact, Amber leaned over to me during the trailer and was like, they should call this Christmas Carol Cirque du Soleil. Because essentially what you have is an elderly man flying through the air, diving off of things, hitting into icicles, sliding on his stomach. Like 90% of this trailer is Scrooge launching places.
Right.
Apparently, flexibility of elderly men is what audiences require. In fact, flexibility of men, I think, is what audiences require. Because if you saw that G.I. Joe trailer, it's not just good enough anymore for a guy to march in with a gun. He has to do 3 handstands and a double twist in the air and they're ballerinas. The modern hero is a ballerina, apparently.
Apparently. Yeah, I don't recall in Dickens' classic the being shrunk and flying down a rooftop, dodging
every
icicles.
Yeah.
And I'm like, icicles kill you. Icicles kill people. And not to mention elderly people. Not to mention elderly people who are shrunk down.
Yeah, the man is brittle. I mean, there's no reason why he needs to be launching down this thing, screaming.
Ugh. It really looks like the Hollywood that everybody jokes about and hates, which is they take something cherished and loved and established because they know they can sell that, but then just totally and now it's going to have action moves, and now there's going to be a hot chick in it, and now there's going to be the same thing that's going on with Sherlock Holmes. Just kind of what on earth are you doing? It's not at all about this. It's supposed to be, and a lot of it is it's in Disney 3D. And so all of that I'm watching it, I'm like, this is designed to pop out,
Well, and that can be really impressive. Maybe he'll do a good job with it. I don't know.
Yeah, but can I just say, just Polar Express is all I needed to see to just put this down for me, because Uncanny Valley City.
There's a city built on the valley.
Exactly. Just the people. We're all singing really loud and happily. The choir that he says humbug to.
I know. And that line, that bah humbug line, is supposed to be delivered kind of just quietly and just sort of, humbug. Instead, it was it zooms in on his face and he's like, humbug! It's his awesome quote.
Right, the camera pans up from down underneath, the lighting shifts.
We gotta stop talking about Christmas Carol, but the idea is that there was a lot of kids' trailers before this movie. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely not a kids movie, and I took a moment for me to adjust. I believe the intended audience for this movie from Spike Jonze was the kids like you and I, and even people older than us who grew up reading this book.
Right.
You know, I thought on that note, this movie is awesome. Okay, after I accepted it, after I got past the shocking kind of 28 days later zombie attack that was the first moment of this movie. I was just like, oh my goodness, is that thing okay? After I got past that and started to just watch it as an adult and just enjoy it, I loved this movie. Cool. It kind of was what I've always wanted from the idea of having a live action Miyazaki movie.
Right.
It was bizarre, don't get me wrong. It had continuity flaws, ? Like, it just didn't flow the way a regular story does because the world is still a child's world. Yeah. It's still ruled by the rules of a child and having fun and just kind of fairness and things like that, which are the most elementary of emotions. There's no real high drama, you could say, in this.
Right.
Everything seems kind of petty and instinctive, but then again, there's no better title to capture that than Where the Wild Things Are.
Right.
Kids are wild, and I think that's really what this movie gets at.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up what it gets at, because I was really struggling to find a theme in this movie or a sort of a point, and it really felt like it needed there to be one, and I'll explain why. It's a very heavy movie, where we've both said this is not for kids. Specifically why it's not for kids, I think, is because there is a deep sadness hanging over this whole film. When you have like a never-ending story or something, you have the luck dragon find the kid, right? And then takes him on a thrilling adventure. Yeah. A magical adventure, and makes his life amazing. Or he's riding on top of it going, woo! And I thought that's what this was going to be from the previews. However, these monsters are depressed.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding. The monsters are actually, they have a lot of angst. They have a lot of rage. We actually see the bones of their former king, who they have apparently eaten. Mm-hmm. There is a dysfunction to this group of monsters, and they don't really know how they're going to get out of that. In fact, they look at Max, the boy character, as a way of maybe getting past their difficulties. I was really surprised by that, and then I was waiting for there to be a resolution, like a point or a message or something, a breaking of that sadness. And I have to say that throughout almost the entire movie, I mean, it is just hanging the dark cloud. And at times it dips down into, for what I thought was almost kind of boredom, because of the pacing of this being so sad and kind of oppressive. I mean, I'm trying to expel this out because I really think people are getting a wild rumpus idea from the preview. I will say that the production of the movie I thought was excellent. I thought that the monsters looked great. I don't want to know how they did it because it's just so convincing. I think it's CG mixed with puppetry, but I don't know, and I love not knowing.
I agree entirely on that point. There was I really was watching these monsters, and for the first 10 minutes or so, trying to figure out how they were pulling this off. Like, wow, these are just like really there,
Yeah.
There was this whole like proportion thing going on with how huge they are compared to the kid, and I'm like, well, clearly that can't be a guy in a suit because he's too big to be a guy in a suit. But then do they film it twice? But then how do you have the shaky camera? Like that, I literally just gave up, had to give in and suspend my disbelief and just be like, no, there's real monsters. That's the only answer, and I'm going to just sit here and watch this and love it.
Yeah, and that happens so rarely nowadays. I loved that. I also think that the music is great. Throughout the whole thing, I was trying to figure out, who are these bands that I've never heard of? Come to find that it's actually original music done by Karen O, who's the singer of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
I thought I recognized her name.
Yeah, exactly. With the help of members of like the Raconteurs and Bird and the Bee and other bands, she sort of put this together. And the soundtrack is largely kind of light and fun.
Yeah.
And again, the movie is not like that. Like, there is a lot of very dark, like it's monsters going through like an existential crisis. Like they actually mentioned that the sun is going to burn out and eventually they're all going to die, and like it really weighs heavy on them. Most of them are in just such a funk that it almost like sits on your chest.
I don't know. I found myself actually enjoying these characters and in finding it to really be genuine. Mm-hmm. I guess that you could say, well, they're depressed or whatever, but it didn't to me seem so much that way. Like depression is kind of an adult thing where it's steady sadness. They just seemed erratic.
Well, they're very kid-like, like you said.
And what I loved was dialogue is great. The delivery is great. Despite these being puppet computer things, they really are believable in their facial expressions, in their body expressions. The moment KW just sees the kid and goes, "Who's that?" Just like lifts his hand. I think I literally like laughed out loud just at that little gesture.
Yeah.
Because it was so real and so amazing, and coming from this bizarre creature.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we have pretty opposite points of view on it, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I will say that afterwards, I was talking at a diner with some friends of mine about the movie, and some of them brought up some theories about what the movie might mean, and the idea came up about these monsters being a reflection of Max's personality. Like each one of them maybe is a different part of his mind. And actually that makes a lot of sense to me going back, is that the reason I think I was so put off by them is they all act very immature like children, like Max. So yeah, it might be good for me to go back and take a second viewing with the perspective now, knowing what it is. But man, this was just a total shock in terms of what I thought it would be and what it ended up being, and I think it will be for a lot of people.
It is a very singular movie. There was this moment where I was watching it and realized that this was achieving kind of what so many movies try to do, which is that it felt like an extended music video or an extended trailer, because it had that constant sort of excitement, I guess, being a Spike Jonze movie. But it really was keeping my sense of wonder alive.
Yeah, it certainly is like a Lord of the Rings style take on this, where it's happening for real. He went for a very naturalistic approach where it's like, this is going to look like it's happening.
Go see this movie if you grew up with this and kind of want to recapture childhood feelings, but don't take a child to see this.
Yeah, I think that's the one area where we'll actually agree is this is not for kids. I don't really recommend it for adults either. I was kind of bored at a lot of it, and I hate to say that at the end. I don't want to take away from what you said, but unfortunately, it let me down. But yeah, we would both agree, not for kids.
Not for anybody above the tween demographic.
Yeah. So that was Where the Wild Things Are. And before we close out our show, we always like to get a little nostalgic and reminisce about growing up geek. And this week, just a weird childhood story, kind of an unsettling one. But you and I both went to a private school.
Yeah.
And there was a kid there named Timmy Robinson, who I remember in the lunchroom, he was sitting there and he had a accident in his crotchular region, some sort of an operation.
Yeah.
And I'll get to what it was, but he was sitting there, and you know how kids can be cruel. He's eating a hot dog, and the one kid takes the hot dog and starts cutting it up and goes, "This is what happened to you, Timmy."
Oh.
And he's cutting up this hot dog.
Ow.
And then Timmy just sits there and takes, which I don't even think was accurate. I think, again, the information that gets passed around, that Timmy's just sitting there with his head down, and he goes, "That's okay. I know you're going to hell." It's like such a strong memory to me, but it's like, oh, weirdness. But I was telling Jason that story the other day, and he actually reminded me that the kid in question, the accident in question, was actually testicular torsion, where there is a twistification of the nutsular region.
Exactly.
And this is something that has actually happened to Matt, and I wish that Matt was here to fill in the first-person perspective.
I kind of feel bad talking about it without him here, but
yeah, well, why don't you just fill in the details on that one, basically.
I don't even know how Matt ended up with that, but he ended up being operated on by a doctor named Dr. Wiener.
That is the worst part of the story, probably.
And so They went in, they fixed things that are not gonna happen.
Do you feel
again,
more or less confident whenever the name tag is flashed?
I would say more confident. I'd rather be up. It's just like you've been called for this your whole life. Right. You are the chosen one.
Well, it was on like New Year's Eve, and we actually made fun of Matt because there was the New Year's Eve twistification, or no, I think it was Valentine's Day. I think he was actually at like a dance, which we wondered later if it was something to do with the dancing. I mean, gosh, so many things go through your mind because you're like, can that happen to me?
Right.
My mom got out the large blue medical book with the most god-awful pictures.
Mayo's Health Clinic.
Yeah. The pictures in the back of that book, you must never view them because they're like rashes up close with like non-digital cameras, like, you know.
People's skin sloughing off.
Yeah, exactly. But it was one of the holidays he had the twisting, and then the other one he had the appendix burst. It was like New Year's Eve. So like Matt had like a thing with like holiday injury.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, he was twisted, and we were like, how does this happen? And the book, literally, Mayo Clinic book, God bless it, you know, had the diagram showing what can happen. Do you remember how they corrected it?
They stapled it to him.
And another thing that I will forever not know exactly what that means.
The tubules that go from the testiclites up. This is the most like medically like.
I think we're gonna use the Mystery Science Theater versions of everything.
I know, but everything that
the fungulus and the
they fastened those down with
something like
with
that.
staples, not like harsh like boom. Right. But I think to his pelvic bone.
Oh, see, I don't even know. So that's the only place you probably could.
Right, I'm saying like
because where are you stapling these things?
So that they stayed. Oh wait, now I don't know if they removed those or if they're still there and just keeping them untangleable. You know.
Well, we'll have to check in with Matt if he ever comes back on the show for an update.
Yikes!
A progress report, if you will.
So but, Matt, how you've been? By the way, guess what we've been talking about?
Yeah, well, I literally remember the face on our cousin when I told him, because he was like, where's Matt? And I'm like, oh, his testicles were twisted. And he looked like white as a ghost. Like, can that happen? He asked me, like, have you ever had a person just ask you, what'd you just say, when you're like a foot away from them?
Yeah.
He did that like 3 times. He's like, wait, say that again? What? It's like his mind wouldn't accept it, you know?
Abort, retry, fail.
The idea here is a sort of a public service one, I think. This can happen, so maintain proper health. I don't even know what you could do to avoid this.
Careful what underwear you wear or how they swing.
What kind of dances that you do.
Kind of dances you do
at Valentine's.
Stay away from blenders and such.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's
always watch where you're sitting.
Such a cringe-inducing thing that just happened, and it's one of those stories.
But you get to tell people who mock you that they're going to hell.
Exactly. So on that note, if you would like to email us and let us know your childhood stories, if you grew up geek like us, then by all means do that. You can send us an email at mail@growing-up-geek.com, and you can also follow us throughout the week on Twitter at twitter.com/GUGRob and GUGBrad. Once again, my name is Brad.
I live.
Thank you. And we'll see you next week.